Welcome back to the Justin Thurber Show. I am your host, Justin Thurber, and as always, my co-host extraordinaire, Jim Davidson. Happy Easter, Jim. How you doing today?
Doing good. Happy Easter. I'm wearing my favorite Easter attire here. It's a happy Easter with Joe Biden in a Christmas outfit, so it works on both Christmas and Easter. But
That's
yeah, definitely got it gifted from a good friend, so love wearing it during the holidays.
that's awesome. Well, at least it doesn't say Happy Hanukkah, I guess. So, well, as we mentioned earlier, today is Easter, and I was sitting in church this morning, and I realized something I never thought about too much before. As we say, Happy Easter. And if you think about the whole story, whether you are religious or you just know the story, whether you believe in it, whether you don't believe in the story, I think a lot of times stories have impact in our lives, and sometimes they're deeper than we give them credit for. And there's always something we can learn. So when I was sitting in church and with people saying Happy Easter before the service, I realized something, and it's something we talk about a lot. It's that in order to have change, there needs to be sacrifice, right? And I think what happens is most people focus on the results, but maybe not as much as the sacrifice that went into it. And I really want to bring this into the kind of like the political realm or your everyday life realm where we have people doing amazing things. We have parents sacrificing for their kids by going to work and doing the hard jobs. We have people getting into the political realm like Aaron Packard and like Maria Collins, who we've had on, making sacrifices, all with the hope of having a good outcome. And sometimes these people and their sacrifices, it'll never be noticed. It'll never be noticed in their lifetime. And when I sit here and I've run for, when I ran for office last year and I talked to people, I said, one of the things that's probably going to happen is I'll run for office. Maybe I'll be able to make some changes, but I don't know if I'll ever see the impact. But if I know my kids' lives will be impacted for the better and my grandkids' lives will be impacted for the better, this sacrifice is worth it. So I hope someday maybe we can say Happy Easter or Happy something else and our lives were better because of the sacrifices that other people have made.
Completely agree. It's I think that is a message that gets that doesn't get out there enough. It's like there in society, we used to be a society that focused on the sacrifice. There, would be willing to give up in the short term in order to benefit in the long term. And I think one of the things that we've seen a shift in culture recently is more of a shift to the short term benefit, not necessarily the long term benefit. And it's something that we don't focus on. It's something that we don't talk enough about.
Yeah, it was funny. I remember I saw some sort of proverb that was talking about, you plant a seed that you'll never take advantage of the shade. And when I would talk to people, one of my goals I told them was to be an example, was to do the right thing. And hopefully in the future, things will change, but I might never be able to see the results or the impact I had. And I think the reason why I do that a lot, I talk about that a lot, is because I think a lot of people, as you said, they want the instant gratification. They want to say, I sacrificed, my results immediate. And maybe it's indicative of our society where we have a lot of immediate gratification. I think what we have to do, though, is I think we have to sit there and realize sometimes the best things come to those who wait, and sometimes things are going to take a while, and sometimes we might never see the results, right? But hopefully at the end of the day, if we're trying to make a difference for the better of people and the betterment of society, that something will come of what we've done in our sacrifice. So, you and I also prior military, and I never hold what I did in my service in some high regard. I always held it as I just wanted to serve, and I knew a lot of people that either were injured severely, people that paid the ultimate sacrifice. And to me, those people I have the utmost respect for. And I think what I had to do in my career was honor their sacrifice, honor their commitment, and keep fighting for a better society, a better world. And, Maybe that's it. Maybe it's just living each day, setting an example, and getting involved where we can and sacrificing what we need to sacrifice in order to make sure future generations have a better life.
Yeah, and I think that's a good point. Is the stories too that you see. Obviously, we talk about Easter and the sacrifice that Jesus made, and his story, and it's like that's I mean, you see that there's so many successful stories of people that have had to sacrifice, and one actually that hit home to me this past weekend was last night. Actually, they had the UFC in Miami, and
Yeah.
one of the kids I used to train with, Rob Font. So it's so funny. So we started training together probably like 2010 or 2011, and most people when they get into MMA, they have like a pretty strong background in like wrestling or boxing or something, and they get into it and they're successful. But like Rob he came to the gym as a pizza delivery guy. Like he knew nothing about martial arts. He knew like very little. He just saw it on TV one day and was like, oh, that's something cool that I wanted to do. And this guy outworked everyone in the gym, outworked everyone like all around him. And for consistently, the amount of sacrifices between like cutting weight, like anyone that knows how martial arts goes or how like the UFC goes, it's like there's a lot of sacrifice that you had to make. And this past yesterday, or this past weekend, he is one of the headline fights in the UFC.
Wow.
He's fighting with Donald Trump is literally ringside at his fight, and he is going against a guy that's one of the top ranked guys in the UFC, and he ends up knocking him out in the first round. And to me, I'm just like flashing back to when he first came to the gym, and like he just came in and just like very very new to everything, and he just outworked. He made the biggest sacrifices, and he put in the hardest work. And his story was the greatest story out of anyone that I've really trained with. So it just goes to show you how much sacrifice can lead to those amazing stories.
Well, that's the first time I heard that, but that's actually a great story because it's the truth, and you got to see it. However, there's a lot of people that sacrifice, and I bet you a lot of people that watched that fight probably thought, oh, he was brought up in this. He had a lot of training. He didn't have to work hard. They don't understand. That's why I said earlier, they don't understand the amount of work, the amount of time, the amount of dedication, the amount of sacrifice. I always try telling my kids, listen, at some point in time to get ahead, you're going to have to sacrifice. And here's the problem. He could have won last night and lost, but still he accomplished something. We accomplished something. And I always want to bring this back to, people that listen and people that watch. I've had the pleasure in the last year, well, my whole life, but basically in the last year when getting into politics, of watching just average, everyday citizens that sit there, raise their hand to either get involved, to run for office, to support people that run for office, just to make a difference. It doesn't need to be a lot, but for them, it's a sacrifice, and everyone's sacrifice is different. We all come from different social, economic backgrounds, and what we have to offer is different. But just offering what you can sometimes is a sacrifice, and we have to we have to be thankful for people that actually are willing to do that. And I remember when I was out with standouts or fundraisers, talking to people there that were there for me, I used to tell them, I said, there's no way I can thank you. And they're like, I'm just here for a fundraiser, a standout. And I'm like, I understand, but it's a sacrifice. How many other people are doing it? So hopefully, as a society, we understand that you have to work hard to get ahead. There'll be a sacrifice, and we're better off when we put other things first, and we have a goal and objective, and we march towards it, and we just try to make this world a better place. So, but now we move from sacrifices and Easter and really good things to a crazy, crazy story that I heard this week. I could not believe it. I know I sent it to you. We kind of had a chuckle about this, but if people don't know, and I will read the article, if people don't know, in East Hampton, Massachusetts. There was a principal or superintendent of a school system that was going to become a superintendent of another school system. They voted 4-3 to hire the guy. And the story goes, he used the term ladies to write a letter to two of the school committee members, and that became problematic. So they didn't end up hiring him. So it's as I told you earlier, Jim, what we need is we need a segment where we go like mass stupidity, and the mass is for Massachusetts because I know we bust on a lot of people down south. Sorry, people down south. Because you hear the dumb stories, but we're not immune to that. And this goes to one of my points when we hear this story, and I say it all the time. It's on my material that I post on social media. Don't outsource your thinking. And I think this story, we'll get to the point where you'll see what I mean. There are some people that seriously outsource their thinking. So let me read this story for the people on Spotify. And it's from the Boston Globe. After the leading candidate for superintendent of East Hampton Public Schools claimed he lost his job for using the word ladies in an email, he said he was shocked because he grew up in a time when ladies and gentlemen was a sign of respect. What do you think? Ladies and gentlemen still a sign of respect, Jim?
Yeah, it's well, I just wanted to, it's funny because I've grown up around a lot of different people, and it's like there's a lot of people that grew up in the 60s and 70s where people weren't as sensitive over what words that you used and what words that you didn't. And I've heard some things where I'm like, okay, if they use that in a public setting or they use that in a job interview, they kind of deserve to get some backlash for that. So I'm pretty conscious of what words are deemed offensive and which ones are not. But like the whole ladies thing is just kind of caught me by surprise myself, because I'm like, this is something I don't know of anyone that I've ever met that has thought of that word as offensive. And it's like you go to every single any restaurant that you go to still has ladies and gentlemen on the bathroom. So
don't
there going to
spoil.
be this movement now to remove all ladies and gentlemen on the
Don't spoil the story because we're heading towards that. So check it out. So the story continues, and this is from the Boston Globe. You guys can read it if you want. But in today's modern workplace, is ladies respectful or a microaggression? I hate that word. I want macro aggressions. If we're going to aggress, let's do it right. Right? Unless you're singing along to Beyonce, experts say it's probably best to steer clear of the term. Now, this is funny because when I read this, I was like, pretty soon they're going to come for Beyonce's song too, right? Instead of saying, oh, the single ladies, they're going to be like, all the single people, right? Because you're not going to be able to sit there and say ladies anymore if we allow this to go, right? So the story continues. While not everyone will be offended, several diversity and inclusion experts told the Globe the word has a long and complicated history and can hold negative connotations when used in inappropriate settings, such as contract negotiations in Perron's case. Instead, it's best to ask people how they want to be addressed to avoid alienating or upsetting anyone, right? So here's where we get into my saying that we really need to start getting out and telling people to stop outsourcing your thinking, because this is what the Globe did. There's a story, a guy running for, a person applying to be a superintendent in a town, writes ladies, it's dumb, it's stupid, and they said, well, it was problematic, so we're going to fire you. So instead of the Globe being honest, they have to go find someone willing to fit with their agenda to sit here and tell us that it's a microaggression or it's problematic. So I'll continue reading the story. So Elisa Van Dam, Vice President of Allyship and Inclusion at the Institute for Inclusive Leadership at Simmons University, said the word ladies can be infantilizing in a professional setting. Prone had used the term to address two women. Can we say women? In leadership positions. Well, okay, I still don't see the issue. School committee chair Cynthia, I can't even say, Kwasinski, and the committee's executive assistant Susan Colby, right? The idea of lady does not correlate or does not lead you to a woman who is in charge and in power and has her work really under control. I Can you tell me a better word than ladies for someone that has it in control? I mean, I'm sitting here when I was reading the story and I'm like, well, what words can we use? I don't know.
Well,
What do you say?
that's the thing too, is it's like well, the reason why it's funny too is not that like people felt offended or anything like that. It's we're starting to run into a circular reference error where it's like there's no word that you can use. And like I think of like there's words 20 years ago that were deemed offensive, so a different word was used in its place. Now
Yep.
today those different words are viewed as offensive, so now we have to come up with new words. And I'm like, how long is it before we go full circle and we use the original words that were deemed offensive? Because it's all just like this big circular reference error where it's like you can't use something, so you have to move on to something else, and it never ends.
Listen, this story gets even worse. I don't know how miserable this person's life is if this is how you go through life, but this is the next line. I kid you not. People read it, find it. We'll link to it in the description below. Comment if you want, right? It says, it's none of the things you want to be thought of as a woman in business or any kind of hiring situation. I don't want to be considered, well, I'm not a lady, but I don't want to be considered a lady. If I was a woman, I think I'd want to be considered a lady. These people
Well,
have
it's like if
lost the
do you
plot.
want to be considered a gentleman? I mean, what else? It's like is that a bad thing to be called a
It's
gentleman?
it's gentle person.
Yeah.
She said a candidate addressing women as ladies at any stage of the hiring process can raise questions about the candidate's judgment. It's tone deaf. It seems that he hasn't been paying attention to the way language use has been evolving and how we're talking about diversity and equity and inclusion and belonging. Oh, that's a new one, belonging. He's operating on a very old paradigm. It's like my head's hurting right now reading this, right? So it goes on a little bit more, but let me get you to another good part, right? So what they did, and as I said, we're trying to let people understand that you have a lot of people out there that think they're smart. We have a lot of smart people out there, and what they do is instead of thinking, they allow experts to tell them how to think. The experts say this, so it must be right because they're the experts on it. So I think what happened is the Globe knows most people are gonna be like, ladies, how is that problematic? This is the stupidest thing. So instead of agreeing, instead of saying, hey, this went too far, like, what are we doing? No, they double down. And what they do is they find a couple people whose job is to keep this grift going because you're a diversity, equity, and inclusion professor, or you own a company that's for diversity, equity, and inclusion. And the only way these people keep jobs is by finding new microaggressions. You're never going to solve anything with these people because if you solved it, their job goes away. So what they keep doing is they keep pushing and pushing and pushing. And if you want to find an aggression and if you want to find anything to be offended about, pay them and they'll find it for you. It blows my mind.
Yeah, and it really makes me question how the Boston Globe sources their stories too. Like I'm still a little bit confused how this went from an email conversation to the a main piece in the Boston Globe. So
So
like he sends them an email and then they send an email back saying, "Oh, we're not hiring because you use the term ladies." Like,
yeah,
it's like
well,
if
what happened. It was another story. This made it into national headlines because um, I guess when this made it onto social media, there was like 750 comments. Most people agreed with the guy, like that's silly. I guess 150 people showed up to protest them doing that at the school. So, that garnered some attention. I even think it got into the Daily Mail. That's where I first kind of heard this story, and I didn't pay much mind until, like I said, the Boston Globe ran with it, and they had just this. It's I don't know. It's funny because, like I said, and it shouldn't be funny, right? We shouldn't laugh at this because these people don't care. They don't care that you're laughing because they're changing words, they're changing meaning while we sit here and laugh. So we kind of have to say enough with that. Enough being dumb. Ladies doesn't mean it. So let me go on a little bit more. So while some people may appreciate being addressed as ladies, It can be an informal and appropriate word to use when negotiating contract stipulations and in the workplace, said Jen Mannion. Here we go. A professor of history and sexuality, women's and gender studies at Amherst College. And if someone referred to them in such a way at work, Mannion said, they would flip. How dare you? This is a professor. This is what I mean. We send kids to school and we're like, listen, go learn. So we don't teach our kids to actually think. Well, I try teaching my kids to think, but most people just like go to school and learn. And you know what they learn to do? Regurgitate. The person sitting in front of me, they're the professor, they're a teacher, they're the subject matter expert. They know better than I do. I defer to them. We outsource our thinking. And here's where it gets really good. And I'm going to tie this up in a couple more minutes with how stupid this is. And hopefully everyone sees how stupid this is. But wait until you see what this lady says. This professor says, I'm sorry, I called her a later. She would flip if she was here. I just can't.
That's it. You're fired.
That's it. Justin, you're problematic. Well, it's not the first time I've been called problematic. All right. So Mannion said, this word has historic baggage, and it was often associated with women-only spaces such as passenger cars and public bathrooms. I don't get the passenger cars, but we're back to your public bathrooms. We're going to have to come up with a name. I think this lady's going to give us some, right? That were created for keeping women separate and keeping women of color out of those spaces.
Wait, when did women of color become involved?
Listen,
why?
You throw the kitchen sink. Don't you understand that? And all these things, you throw the kitchen sink, right?
Like, how did this become about race? Like, when is race involved in any of this conversation? Then all of a sudden, people are injecting it. Whereas,
here, like I said, you have to pay these people, and what they do is they fall on whatever straw man, whatever thing they can fall on that's worked before to keep it going. So here we go. The term represented a group of women who fit a certain race or class, Mannion said, and it also evokes a time when women weren't allowed to work and were expected to be soft-spoken and demure. Because of that context, Mannion said, ladies can come off as patronizing and demeaning. So here's where it gets real fun. And it's not real fun because if we don't stand up to this, if we don't start having people being critical thinkers and pushing back against this madness where experts tell us everything we have to do, everything's going to change. Everything's going to be stupid. So Mannion said better ways to address a group of people could include y'all, everyone, folks, friends, and people. I will tell you what, I've been a professional for a lot of years. If I started an email, y'all, I think they would think I lost my mind, right? I would love to see this guy have put his email to those two ladies as, y'all, I was thinking. I don't get it.
Yeah. Hey, people.
Hey, people, right? Oh, yes, it's people's night. Oh, what a night. Right? Are we going to have to change all songs?
I think so.
We can dude looks like a y'all. Yeah, yeah, dude looks like a y'all. I mean,
dun it.
Right? She's a friend. She's a friend. I don't know this song. Whoa, whoa, whoa. She's a friend.
What was the one at the beginning? All the single friends.
All the single friends. All the single friends. Yeah. But again, we laugh, and this is our problem, right? We laugh at this. They don't care. They keep going, right? Now, again, one of the things that I want to bring us to, right, is when I say that we outsource our thinking, what a lot of people are going to do is they're going to hear this story, they're going to read this story, they're going to read what these two experts say, and they're going to say, you know what? It probably is problematic. I did not know that that's what ladies meant. But you just got to do a little research. And this is something we don't do. We don't do the research. We don't look into things. So I went to Merriam-Webster's because I figured, hey, Merriam-Webster's, some people have issues with Merriam-Webster's and how lately they've been a little bit politicized. So I said, let me check them and see what they say the definition of lady is. Huh. Right off the bat, a woman having property rights or authority, especially as a feudal superior. Sounds like a minimized lady.
Yes, how derogatory.
A woman receiving the homage or devotion of a knight or lover. I can't
Sounds like
believe
a hoodlum to me.
How dare you? We're gonna have that Greta Thunberg thing.
Yeah.
How dare you? Right? Oh, check this out. A woman of superior social position. You know what? Now I get it. Obviously, those school committee members don't have superior social position, so maybe ladies was too high. Maybe that's what we were thinking about it wrong. Maybe it was ladies was too high instead of being too low. Maybe it was too high of a compliment, too high of a word to use. But again, you go down these definitions, right? Often used in a courteous reference. Any of various titled women in Great Britain, titled women. All these things say you have to be some like women of importance. But if you outsource your thinking to the professor who wants you to believe that everything is a microaggression, they're going to sit there and lie to you or spin it in a way that you, or maybe not you, but other people will sit there and start buying this baloney. And that is what I mean when I say we have to stop outsourcing our thinking. I want to get that into a lot of people's heads. People out there, please use it. Please use it. Tell people you're outsourcing your thinking. When a politician's telling you something you know it's wrong and it's provable wrong, don't believe them. Don't go along with them. Don't be like, well, they know. That's the problem. I'm going to tell you right now, most people don't know. Most people talk out their behinds. I also want to show one other thing because this is also what I found funny in Merriam-Webster. I'm going to have to move the screen. Give me a second. Is for usages, recent examples on the web. So what they did is said, hey, listen, recently on the web, we've used lady in this context. So President Joe Biden and First Lady Joe Biden. Well, that's problematic.
Very
First
problematic.
Joe Biden. Right? Here's another example from Merriam-Webster's. President Biden speaks in Rolling Fork, Mississippi as First Lady Jill Biden. Well, that's problematic. First y'all, Jill Biden. Is that what we got to do? So my point with this is they sit there and will tell you this is problematic. You're not supposed to do that. But then they use it all the time. So again, we have to call out stupidity when it's stupidity, right? We have to say this is mass stupidity because this probably only happens in Massachusetts because we have this educated elite class, right? We think we're smarter than a lot of other people. And because we think that, we defer to them. Well, I don't defer to them, but a lot of people defer to them because we think we know better. We think we are better. What do you say, Jim?
Yeah, and it only evolves from here too. It's like we laugh at it now, and then in like 5-10 years from now, it becomes at a point where nobody can use the word lady in society anywhere. That's the way it goes. And I hate to say it, but it's kind of like how pronouns have gone in a lot of circumstances too, where like even if I just go to Dunkin' Donuts to get my coffee, I see the guy at the window with his he him pronouns on it, and I'm like, I can see you're a guy. Like I don't I don't need to see your pronouns to know you're a guy. You know what I mean? Like I don't know. It's gotten a little bit too far, and it starts with one thing like this, and then it just evolves over time to the point where like society is just completely changed into a different direction than what it was. But like you said, it's like it's completely just in a way that doesn't make sense at all.
No. Listen, I understand over time, like things change. We have to have that discussion as a society. What it can't be is it can't be people that want to make change for the sake of change, pissed off people, people that want to look at everything as a microaggression, trying to change everything just to smooth out the edges of life, because life is always going to have sharp edges. And my biggest thing is, I look at these people on the school committee, I hope that town votes them out. Because if you don't have the capacity to deal with ladies or words, what else don't you have the capacity to deal with? Like, I don't trust you. If you can't take a word or something and maybe even like, this should be a learning situation. Should it be a learning situation? How about those women, instead of the like, we're gonna fire you or we're not gonna take you now, and say, hey, listen, we really didn't appreciate that. Could you call us y'all? He might have been like, that's dumb, but whatever, you know. But where's the discussion? That's another piece of this. There's like no discussion. And again, so here's the thing. I think some of the story too is they probably didn't want this guy. They came up with any excuse they could just to say, hey, listen, we don't want you. That's happened to me. I went for jobs and positions, and I went to become an officer in the military, and you have to do this big interview. There's a board, there's a bunch of people. So I went in, I killed it. And I still have the paperwork because it's funny. They didn't pick me to be an officer because I said the word ain't. Ain't. I'm like, what? Oh yeah, you said the word ain't. You can't be an officer.
Ain't.
Ain't. AAINTE. Ain't. So what that meant to me was they had someone picked. They had nothing else to say. So pick something. Right? And to me, this is this story. But the bigger part of the story is the amount of effort that the Boston Globe took to make this an actual thing, to actually give this legs, to actually give this meaning. That's crazy.
Yeah, and that's the good point, is because in this situation, you have a person, a candidate, who's seemingly all else qualified to do this role. And instead of picking apart and saying, hey, you know, this part of your resume didn't qualify you for the job, it was this completely separate reason that's like nonsensical.
Sure.
And when we look at this stuff too, it's like, you know, obviously, like you said about times of changing, we want to be sensitive to people's feelings and whatnot. But what a lot of people don't realize too is, like, the way that we look at it is there's another agenda that's being driven here. And like, there was a political analyst that was talking about this in the 70s. We got to bring up the clip at some point in the future where they talk about, you know, it takes about 20 years to change the culture of society, because they start when you're a kid. They start with kids, and then they completely change the way that society is constructed to have them believe a completely different that society operates a completely different way. It's like ideological subversion is the technique that they use. But yeah, and that's exactly what they're trying to do. It's like when you have groups take down statues and erase history, it's like there's a deeper agenda that's being driven here. It's not just about, okay, this is an insensitive term, but you know, it's like
that's definitely a future discussion that we'll probably get into and have. Hopefully it won't be because there's more statues being knocked over, but who knows?
And someone had a good phrase for it. It's like, when the people who want to destroy society are louder than the people who want to defend society, that's what's going on right now. And that's why we're moving in this direction. And until the people that want to defend society are louder than the people trying to destroy it, we're going to keep moving in this direction.
Well, I'll tell you, this is where I agree with you and I disagree with you a little bit, because I agree with you. One of the things is they're not always louder is they held the institutions, right? They held the mainstream media. They didn't let people do this. That's why I think podcasts and video shows like this are really good, because we're allowed and we're getting the different takes. We're actually getting some common sense thought out there. So share this with people. or at least share the ideas with people. And if they're like, hey, where'd you come up with that? Be like, oh, the Justin Thurber show. Jimmy Davidson said this. Justin Thurber said this. You got to watch it. Because what we're trying to do is we're trying to help people see what's going on and also help them see it in a different light. And it's not because we're some great minds, right? I think what we're trying to do is not talk to the same things that they want us to talk about. If we keep saying the same things over and over and nothing gets taken care of, they love it. But by having our discussions, having these different ways of looking at things, having an article that sits there and most people would be, well, all it is this, it's stupid. Well, it's not stupid. And B, it's indicative of a bigger problem that we face as a society that we need to be cognizant of and stop doing. And that's listening to expert classes to actually, when we get information, process that information, say, does that make sense? And if it doesn't make sense, go against it. Say, no, that makes no sense. And tell people that doesn't make sense. We can't be quiet anymore. And hopefully shows like this and other shows that are coming out from different people around the United States that I'm sure other people have watched on here will start pushing back. And I hope our younger generation, as you said, I hope what they start understanding is, and I hope their parents teach them that you have to see the world, you have to look at the world, you have to see what it's telling you, and then you have to put it through like a filter, some sort of filter in your brain and say, does that make sense? Yes or no? And if it doesn't make sense, be able to take it and come up with your own understanding, your own conclusion. I tell you what, 9 times out of 10 is going to be different than what these people are telling you. So, all right. I think we beat those folks with a long enough. Right?
Yeah, my last note on that would just be, one way to kind of change the direction is just get involved yourself. A lot of this stuff is being played out on the local levels. And I mean, like in my town recently, there was a big to-do about Columbus Day versus the Indigenous Peoples Day, given that we're on, talking about holidays here.
Yep.
And it's like, you just feel the agenda. You can see right through the agenda of why they try to erase some of these traditions and holidays that have been celebrated in the past, and like all that. A lot of these battles are happening on the local level. So I can't speak enough about just anyone just getting involved in your local elections, and even if you're not familiar with something, it's like learn a little bit about the position and get involved, because that's really how the course gets changed.
So one last thing I guess I would say is, if you're a lady of the night, if you're a lady, please comment below and tell us if you like being called lady, or if you want to be called y'all or folks or friends or people. Comment below. If you have heard other things and you like to be called something else, comment below on that. I just think we really need to do better, for our kids. Our next subject we're going to talk about is actually part 2. I think if people saw our video last week, it might be up over here somewhere, about the audit. And I told you that there was some more information that came out. So again, what I did is I went online, I found a video. The state auditor of Massachusetts, Diana DiZoglio, she was on. I condensed her video down. It was probably 9 or 10 minutes. I condensed it down to like 6 or 7 minutes. What I'd like to do is I'd like people out there to listen to what she has to say. There's a lot of interesting things. And again, what I really hope people start doing is start looking at some of these things with a critical eye and with a critical ear, because there are some parts in this that I think most people would just gloss over. And I'm going to stop. Jimmy and I will talk about it. But there are some big things that were said and we're just kind of like left there. We're also linked to the whole video so people can go see the whole thing, just to show you again that all I did was I cut the video up just to save time, because some things were repeated. And here we go. So let's start this right now.
The audit is currently taking place right now.
The audit is currently taking place right now.
We have begun the process of conducting the audit, yes. So yes, I hear that a state representative, who happens to be the speaker, has, suggested that he is not happy about this audit taking place, but our office is moving forward as planned, and we are currently conducting the audit.
But don't you need his cooperation and the cooperation of the Senate President?
We would very much value the cooperation of the Senate President and the Speaker of the House, and I have said that if need be, in the course of this audit, if it's needed, that we could take this conversation to court. I am hopeful and optimistic that they will come around and that they will see the value in working together with our office like every other state entity in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts does.
So let me pause right there. So again, so people that watched this last week, what she's talking about, you would already know, but for people that don't, we'll post a link to the video, but we'll go into a little bit right now. Is she wants to do an audit of the state legislature in Massachusetts. The current head of the House of Representatives and the Senate don't want it. They don't want it done, and they don't think she has the power. Diana DiZoglio, she's a Democrat, and as I stated last week, I don't care if she's doing an actual audit. I love it. There should be transparency. What's happening is our representatives, as she stated last week, someone else stated last week, that two or three people in all of Massachusetts are making all the laws. So while we sit here and we go out and we vote for people and say these are the people we want to represent us, they go up to the state house, and basically what happens is they're neutered, and only two or three people are actually making the laws. And she'll go on a little bit more to explain how that's working, but I think it's something that we have to be cognizant of voters, of constituents of Massachusetts, and actually anywhere you live. If you live in Idaho, if you live in Rhode Island, if you live in Texas, we have to hold our representatives to account, that they have to do their job, right? And I think what happens is if we don't hold them to account, then what they do is they don't listen and do what the hell they want to do. And that's why I'm happy the State Auditor of Massachusetts is doing this. I hope it's a legitimate one. I hope it, finds things. It sounds like she's doing the right thing. But even just the threat of an audit coming, maybe it'll make our representatives want to work for us more, or at least do the right thing. What do you say, Jim?
It's nice to know there seems to be some sort of infighting in the Democrat Party as well. We talk about how much there is going on in the Republican Party and how it kind of like causing the party to not operate as efficiently as it can. So it's nice to know that there are some different lines of thinking within the Democrat Party, and they're not all marching to the same tune and taking orders from the same people. So it is refreshing to hear. I hope it continues. I hope they are able to find more, some actual shocking information with the audit. We'll see as it goes on. I'm not, I don't know. I only have so much, hope, I guess, for it, but we'll see what happens as it goes.
I do like the lawsuit aspect of this too. This is what blows my mind is there's going to be a lawsuit to see if they can do this. But let's play it a little bit more, and maybe we'll get a little more information about this.
In order for us to work together to increase transparency, accountability, and equity.
Is there a precedent for the auditor to audit the legislature?
There absolutely is. We found in the archives an audit from 1922 that was conducted.
Which he says is not an audit. He called it a financial accounting.
He called it a financial accountability.
It was an audit of the state legislature. And we actually, speaking of precedent, we've been conducting a lot more research recently.
And these are?
And I have here at least 7 other audits that in our research that we've been conducting in recent weeks. Thanks to my staff, they've done tremendous work on this.
And these are audits of the state legislature?
We've been able to find other times where the state legislature has indeed been audited. Yes, sir.
Thank you.
So this idea that there's not precedent, there most certainly is.
Final report on activities of the legislative post-audit, 1981. Office of the State Auditor's Report, 2006. State Auditor's Report on the activities of the legislature, 1986. So
another audit that was conducted actually in 1991 looks at the policies and procedures surrounding an issue with overpayments that were made to a legislative court officer.
So as recently, though, as 1991.
We have
one
one
there
here
for
from 2006. Yep.
Okay, so this is one of the things I think a lot of people watching this video would just gloss over. Where they would sit there, they would look at those 6 or 7 documents that were presented saying, hey, this has been done 6 or 7 times. And they're like, oh, look, there's precedent for it. We can do it. And they say, okay, that has to be done. And that's the way they would think. And again, we want to be a little bit different on this show. We want to think a little bit different. So that's what I first thought. But then I had the second thought. Is this the type of government you want controlling your life? Because if the state auditor is supposed to audit the legislature and is supposed to audit over 200 agencies in the Massachusetts, and they don't know if they have the power to do it, and they have to go back and they have to look at the archives and then realize that, hey, people that knew the job did the job, so it's been done. But then there was people that did this job and had no idea what the heck they were doing, so it never got done. But these are the people we want controlling every aspect of our lives, and it just blows my mind, and it's just one of those things that what we should see when we see this inefficiency, when we see this lack of due diligence or this lack of people doing their jobs, it should blow our mind. We should tell these people, no, we should hold you to a higher standard. And this is one of those things that when I was running for state rep, I always told people, I'm like, listen, I want to be a state rep to show what a state rep is supposed to be. Because what has happened is over the years, instead of a state rep or an elected official working on the behalf of their people, they're telling you, I am your leader. I am going to tell you what to do because I know better than you. And that's not how it works. And this is just more proves the point that they don't even know how it works. They don't know their jobs. And they just make it up as they go along, but we're supposed to listen to them. It just blows my mind.
Yeah, the state reps are supposed to work for the people, not the people working for the state reps. And what I find interesting about this story too, I think DiZoglio was one of the ones that was criticized before because she doesn't come from like a financial auditing background. So
correct.
People during the campaign, she was getting criticized that auditor with no experience should not be running for this position. But I think based on what's happened this year, she's probably done more than most of the auditors in the past. I mean, to be honest, I can't even name who the auditor was off the top of my head before she stepped in there. Yeah. So, I mean, clearly she's, doing more work than in the past. And it's refreshing to see because a lot of times, I mean, an auditor is a position where you can pretty much just get elected and then not do anything for the next 4 years until your next campaign election cycle, and then you can run again. And that's what a lot of these politicians do. A lot of the state reps do is like they get elected. Their job is getting elected. Yes. And then once they get elected, they just pretty much sit back and do nothing until it comes time to get elected again. So it's actually nice to see she's actually doing some homework. She's actually, doing something, which is a lot better than most of the politicians that we have on Beacon Hill right now.
You know what probably happened, and you just made me think of this. What probably happened is she got there, and she didn't have the experience, and she's like, "I want to be competent. What am I supposed to do?" And then she looked, and this is what I'm supposed to do, and she started doing it. And now you have all these people, and I'm sure some of them know, right? If there was one done in 2006 or whatever they said, some have been there that long that they know this happens. But, they don't want to be audited. So if they don't sit there and tell you that this happens, they just let it go, they can operate in total darkness where we can't see anything. So I'm glad she looked into it. I'm glad hopefully she shed some light on this. And again, if the only thing that comes out of this in my thing is, let's say this is all for her for political posturing so she can get some position later or do something. If that's all it is, at this point right here, I like it. I like it because at least it's showing that they don't do what they're supposed to. They don't want transparency, but they want to know what the hell their constituents are doing. They don't want you to have privacy. And that's not how it's supposed to happen. I'm supposed to have my privacy. You're supposed to be transparent. And this is what people need to know. And this is the discussion that we have to have, no matter if it's a state auditor in Massachusetts or it's a state auditor in another state. If you're listening in another state and your state auditor hasn't audited your legislature, call them up. say, hey, listen, look what Massachusetts is doing, because that's what I want you to do. You're supposed to be making sure they're doing the work they say that we elected them to do. So, that's one of the good things about this, because again, even if nothing comes of it, what I hope is people see this and they want this and they start calling for this. And in the future, they hold these people to account. So let's listen a little bit more. Let me do that.
All right.
So these were
Is there
just-
anything missing from these?
So we are looking through the reports right now and taking a deep dive again alongside all of our staff. And they're finding that there are incidents where in the annual report for the auditor's office, it's listed that there was a legislative audit conducted. However, many of those actual audits are missing. These
Missing. Missing. Isn't that convenient? Why would some audits be missing? I wonder. There's no precedent, but there's ones missing. So someone had to know that there was audits done. They probably weren't good, and they go missing.
It reminds me of some of the FBI cases you had recently where all of a sudden they forgot to testify. They forgot to interview somebody under oath, or, all of a sudden evidence goes missing in one of the cases. And it's just like, it mysteriously goes missing. I think we all know what happened in those situations.
Yeah. All right, let's do
These are the ones we were able to recover from the archives in the State House Library. There's more where these came from. We just need to find them.
So you have said that the audit has begun. What is where do we go from here? The audit continues, and if you have to fight in court to continue it, you will.
Yes, we have said that, if it's needed, that we will have this conversation in court. But again, there is clear precedent that this has been done before. And this is an opportunity for the legislature to work alongside of our office to help voters access what's actually going on in the state legislature. The state legislature here in Massachusetts is ranked as one of the least transparent state legislatures in the
I wish he said it louder for the people in the back. Our state legislature is one of the least transparent in the United States. Well, I have no doubt. They passed laws last year to make it less transparent.
Right.
Crazy. But
What
again,
if Diana Dazaglio is like a mastermind that's like really like some conservative like lady and has just like ran in the Democrat Party the whole time because that's what she's seen as like the best opportunity to actually like get in and make change? Like I'm like at this point I'm like maybe she has some like deep mastermind strategy going on behind all this stuff.
I'd hate to sit there and do that, but there is something she says later that kind of gets me thinking. I guess she had to sign a confidentiality agreement when she was.
I'm just joking around, but like that would actually not be. I mean, given the way Massachusetts is, there's probably be a lot of people that would be better served, like running undercover. And I mean, if she's in the city, there's no chance that a Republican has running in the city right now in Massachusetts. So I'm like, you'd almost be better off running undercover as a Democrat, and then once you get elected, all of a sudden speaking up.
Yeah, who knows? But again, even just saying that out, right? Saying that out on Boston News, saying that we're one of the most, or one of the least transparent legislatures in all of America. That's what people need to know. Like, we should be ringing bells. We should be telling everybody, like, hey, listen, the people we elect to do our business don't want you to know what they're doing. I tell you what, that's almost like me hiring somebody and I'm like, hey, what'd you do today? And they'd be like, yeah, you don't need to know.
Right.
Like, what'd you do this week? You don't need to know. What did you do this month? You don't need to know. What'd you do these last couple of years? You don't need to know.
Where are your timesheets?
Yeah, where are your timesheets? But you need to give me a raise. That's what you need to do.
Right.
So, let's listen some more.
Entire nation. We can do better. We should do better. We must do better. And the auditor's office is here to help.
You won't hesitate to use taxpayer funds to push this in court.
Yeah, I heard the speaker bring up the use of taxpayer funds if this has to go to court. The reality is that, if the speaker or anybody else who was concerned about this was really interested in taxpayer dollars being wasted on this, then they would welcome the opportunity for an audit, which would seek to make sure that there's there's no potential waste, fraud, and abuse going on in the legislature, right? And they would also work alongside of us to prevent this from having to go to court, recognizing the clear precedent that exists. So, you know, we don't want to have to go to court, and we're hoping that legislative leaders will welcome this audit to prevent that from happening.
The other thing I have to talk about there is of how that always gets kicked around, the tax dollar thing, because there's a big difference between new tax dollars and existing tax dollars.
Yes.
So when a lot of these new spending programs get put in place, like the millionaire's tax, right, that just got passed in Massachusetts, that's people that are getting taxed more and they're spending new dollars. But what they're talking about here, from my understanding, for the most part, is like, if this goes to a court, you're talking about people that are already on government salary. They're already getting paid out of taxpayer dollars. So you're not talking about really spending a lot of new, like, you're not increasing taxes and bringing new taxpayer dollars into this. You're pretty much just allocating time that people are already getting paid to do their jobs to get put on this stuff. That who knows what they're doing? You know, at least we know what they're doing now. So I think that's like a big you know, kind of like illusion that gets put out in the media a lot.
Well, I'm glad you picked up on that too, because I love when they all of a sudden care about tax dollars, right?
Yeah, exactly.
I remember at my election, right, like a week before the election, they passed a $4 billion supplementary budget bill or spending bill, so politicians could go, current politicians could go to their towns, which mine did, and like, look, I got $20 million for you. That was a farce for one thing, because 20 million out of 4 billion is nothing. And it didn't even go to the town. It went to a company in the town that's been polluting the town. So you're sitting there going like, okay, that's stupid. But it's always funny when they sit there and they're like, oh, you're going to waste money on court? Like, yeah, if we can find out if you guys are screwing us 10 ways to Sunday, yes, I think that's money well spent. Or you could do your job and be transparent, because obviously in the past, these have been done. And because they've been done in the past, there's precedent. And if you have nothing to hide, show it. You should be transparent, so your people feel that you're doing the job that you were voted in and elected to do. And here's my thing. This should be the law. If you don't want, and again, they'll never make it because they want to stay in power, but the law should be, and maybe we should elect new people to do this. If you don't have audits and if you're not transparent, you're automatically out. Like, automatically. You don't need to go to a special runoff. You don't need to go vote. It's just like, you're gone. Because that's what we do in a regular business, right? In a privately owned business. If I can't see what the hell you're doing, what the hell am I paying you for? So there's another more. So this goes a little bit more too, because this is about the audit. And then there's some other things that the auditor's office can do. And so this next part of this video doesn't have to do with the legislature and the audit on that. But my gosh, more people need to know about what's going to happen next. I'm not going to spoil the surprise. We can talk about it, but you got to listen to this.
I want to ask about the governor's office. Governor Maura Healey, she did endorse you. Will you audit her office?
So again, like, sometimes these news media people are part of it. So see how she framed that question. This is why we have to really pay attention to the way things are done. Well, she did support you. Are you going to audit her office? Kind of like, know your role, know your place. How dare you do that? I mean, the tone of that lady is like, how are you going to do this? She's supported. It's my
throughout
job.
the entire interview. It's not just on throughout the entire interview. She's just very combative with her, where you would think that they would be supporting this and they would want this, you know, but it's like they're attacking her over it.
I'd be like, oh, go get her. So, all right. So listen, it gets even worse. I don't know how much worse it can get, but here you go.
We are required to actually audit every state entity. And we actually are going to be conducting an audit of taxpayer-funded non-disclosure agreements, as was a commitment on the campaign trail. You may have heard some news about this previously regarding some of the hush settlements that have been occurring.
Can I? Hush settlements?
Is that the state trooper?
Oh
stuff?
wait, it gets even better. But I was sitting here talking to someone about this, and they're like, "Wait." And again, I don't like to bring too much stuff in Trump because people are like, "Oh, whatever." But Trump supposedly may or may not have paid hush money, but we're using tax dollars to hush people up.
Well, yeah. So in this case, I think what she's referring to is, I mean, obviously you heard Maura Healey had some inappropriate
Yes.
relationships with
Yes.
people under her, and I think there's some debate over what went on there. You know, kind of hush payments as well, and like while she was on working for the government at the time too. So yeah, there's a whole story there that I think has yet to be unraveled.
So damn it, Jim, why would you audit us? We're gonna have to go to court, and you're gonna have to use taxpayer dollars to do that. At the same time, we need to use your taxpayers' dollars to protect us from our dalliances and inappropriate behavior. That is an effective and useful use of your tax.
Yeah, it's laughable, really. Yeah, it's just you know, it's like we're giving the priority to the completely wrong things with our tax dollars.
All right, this is a little bit more.
And the problems associated with those hush agreements, right? Well, right here in Massachusetts, friends, there are taxpayer dollars being used to fund hush agreements to potentially silence victims of harassment, discrimination, abuse.
Silence victims of harassment, discrimination, and abuse. I think we've talked about people who've been harassed and abused in previous episodes, right? And the funny thing for me, right, is what is our legislature mostly comprised of? Democrats.
Right.
And they're the first people to sit there and tell you, don't discriminate, don't do this, don't do that. And then we have them using our money to pay people off because they're harassing, discriminating, and abusing people. It blows the mind, right? Like, when are we as people gonna sit here and hold our elected officials to a higher standard? Right? I think you and I talked about this before, Jim. Is I think what happens a lot of times people think their politician is the good one. It's the other people's politicians that are the bad ones. And that's why we keep getting sucky politicians elected all the time, right? Like you sit here like, well, my representative isn't that bad. It's all the other ones that are bad. No, they're all bad. They all suck. Right? Unless that guy is going up there saying, listen, I want transparency. I want you to know what the heck's going on. I'm putting in rules. I'm putting in bills to make us be more transparent and do what we're supposed to do. Vote them all out. Vote them all out.
Yeah. And I've heard it several times on the campaign trail where we had identified businesses that were known as being conservative or donating to Republicans. So we reached out to them, and they had let us know that shortly after donating to Republican causes, there was a case opened up with them with the Attorney General's office. So there's definitely a lot of allegations of the Attorney General's office being used, weaponized and politicized, even in Massachusetts, to go after businesses that don't support the Democrat cause.
Well, even in mine, like, people didn't want to come out and say they were supporting, because if they did, they were afraid that their state rep would do something to them. And you sit there like, this isn't how it's supposed to work. Now, granted, when they go into the voting booth and they vote, they probably voted for me. But if that's how it's working, it's broken.
There was one business that we talked to. I won't say their name just because I don't want it to get too public. But they said that after they had donated to like a big Republican candidate, they hire workers from all over, and they mostly source from within their own neighborhood, which is a pretty small rural neighborhood in Massachusetts. So you wouldn't think that there'd be like a lot of immigration issues. And they had just someone, I think, had lied on their immigration status.
I know this is going, yeah.
Paperwork. So they had hired them just thinking that they were, a regular citizen or whatnot. And then turns out that the Attorney General's office open up a case for hiring illegals and having illegals. It's like you have so many happening, so much of this happening in Massachusetts that they don't check. They sweep it all under the rug. Yet they identify this one business as breaking the law, and that's who they go after.
So it's funny you say that, because next week you and I are going to do a segment on how Boston is giving free tuition to all its residents, and doesn't matter your immigration status. And Mayor Wu gets on TV and talks about it like, you don't even have to be a citizen of the United States. You could just be a resident of Boston and you're going to get free tuition. However, if you donate money to the wrong party, we're going to send the attorney general after you. But we care about your taxes and we care about the immigrants, as long as they do what we want them to do and you do what we want you to do.
Exactly.
Oh my gosh. So just a little bit more of this video.
All sorts of things. We are following actually a Montana audit that was done of non-disclosure agreements in the state of Montana that actually they did a great job at shining a light on how much in taxpayer dollars was spent on silencing employees in state government and potentially protecting powerful perpetrators of harassment, discrimination, abuse, assault. We know about the Harvey Weinstein.
Oh, she just added assault into there. But this is what I do like. And again, this is where I said people, no matter where they live, and again, sometimes we talk about Massachusetts politics, but I think this can be applied to most states. And what I do like that she did is she said, hey, listen, we copied another state and what they did because it was effective and it had proven results. That's how we're supposed to get better. We're not supposed to sit here and reinvent the wheel all the time. But like I said, that's why I'm impressed with Diana Dizoglio, the auditor. And I hope she's really moving forward. And, my hope is that she does what she says she's going to do. I hope the political pressure doesn't get too much for her and she really digs in. So let's just finish this up and like 50 seconds left.
Weinstein incidents where, women were coming forward and claiming sexual assault and claiming sexual harassment.
Right, these are used in private business a lot. You're saying they shouldn't be used at the public level.
So I'm giving those examples though because, this is what they have been used for and abused. They've been abused in the private sector to cover up bad behavior and frankly illegal behavior. It is not okay for our tax dollars to be used to cover up inappropriate behavior in our state government. We know that at least 33 non-disclosure agreements have been given out in our own House of Representatives.
33.
But we don't know why. We don't know how much money was spent on them. That's unacceptable. We're not just going to be looking at the legislature in that regard. We're going to be conducting a statewide audit, looking at state agencies and entities across the board, including the administration, to your earlier point about the governor's office.
Diana.
Absolutely.
So there you go. I give her credit. I hope she's a lady of her word.
She's wearing red too in that interview. Do you think that's like a message that, hey, I'm not on your team?
I don't know. That's a good one. Her first one from last week's video, I think she was wearing blue though. So I don't know. Maybe it was like a power move or whatever. But yeah. She's a strong lady. I don't know if I can use that word. She's a strong auditor.
She's a strong y'all. She's a strong y'all.
She's strong y'all. If you don't know, we're talking about, watch our other video about the DEI and the superintendent not getting a job.
Not DIE, because that it's good thing they chose that.
Watch our other video. It'll be in the links or description or somewhere around here. But again, 33 non-disclosure agreements, taxpayers' dollars being used to cover up discrimination, abuse, assault, harassment. And then you have the Speaker of the House sitting there like, it'd be a waste of taxpayer dollars to go to court to see what we're doing. But again, that's why I love it, because again, even if nothing comes of this, hopefully this stuff gets out, right? Share this video with people. Like, we'll put timestamps in there, so you can just go to the timestamp, say, hey, look at just these couple of timestamps, a couple of minutes, just to see what the heck is going on, and say enough.
And like we talked about too, it's like, what was that? Was that WGBH or who was conducting that?
WBZ.
WBZ, yeah. So the two people interviewing her too were like completely attacking her over it. Like these
Yes.
are like she's dropping bombshells of like, hey, we have all this missing information, all these non-disclosure agreements that were signed, and they're attacking her over it. And so it's like, what's their agenda? You would think that they'd be like, oh, tell us more. Like, we want to learn more. Like, where is this going? What do you expect to find? Like, what's the timeline of this? But no, it's like, why are you doing this? Oh, you're going to be doing them too? Are you going to be investigating? They supported you. Are you going to investigate people who supported you too? It's just,
Listen, only we're allowed to do investigative journalism based on what the people in power tell us to investigate.
Yeah.
Right? That's what's going on. And again, good for her. I will support this. Like, again, maybe 99% of the things we don't agree on, I don't know. But I will give people credit and I will support people that are doing good work. And I think this is good work because even, like I said, if nothing ever comes from this, just those little bits of information, I hope gets out to more and more people so they understand what is really going on. And if you watch our shows, we have them broken down into segments so you don't have to watch the whole show at once. You'll start to see a common theme. And I don't think we ever sat there, Jim, and thought like, this is what we want to do. But it seemed that the stories, when you start getting into the stories and you start getting into the issues, no matter what they are, the common theme is they want to do, your elected officials want to do what they want to do, and they don't work for you, and they could give a damn about you, and they know better than you. And if you go against them, they're going to try destroying you. And it's a theme that if people don't recognize that really quick, before we know it, we could be in a bad place. So we have to start paying attention. We have to start noticing. And truthfully, we have to start holding them to account. And, part of that is voting them out. Part of that is calling them up or going to when they have office hours and being like, enough. What are you doing?
yeah, they want to investigate your $601 Venmo transaction.
Yeah.
But we have a statewide position, an auditor. This isn't like some fringe position. This is one of the 4 statewide positions that we have. You want to conduct an audit, which is like the very crux of what that position does. And it's like, you can't do that, So it's like, it's just unbelievable.
Everyone else conduct an audit on everyone else. And again, I think I made mention this in an old episode, is I think what happens is the reason why they want to audit our $600 is because it's a kind of a projection, right? I think not all of them, but a lot of them are corrupt or do things that they know isn't right. So they just assume everyone is like them. And if everyone's like them, we're screwing them. And how dare you screw them? So let's audit you. That's not how it works, right? We're supposed to maintain our privacy. You're elected to maintain our privacy, and you're supposed to be transparent. So
the other thing I like about this audit too is the more spotlight is shown on Diana DeZoglio in this audit, the more pressure there is for her to produce results as well.
Yes.
So like if she comes out of this with nothing, obviously that's going to be, that's going to reflect poorly on her. So the more pressure, the more spotlight that's put on this is like the more, I guess, the more pressure there is to find results in this audit.
I agree with you to a point. I do think this, though. I think, like I said earlier in the show, like we're building structures to hopefully get this information out. So if things didn't happen, like you or I would talk about it, hopefully people that watch our show would share it with other people, so a lot of people would know, okay? However, the mainstream media would love that she didn't, so they would spin it a certain way or they would just not even discuss it. And that's one of the problems, and that's why we need to pay attention. I know a lot of people don't want to watch shows like this, don't want to spend the time. So we're going to be on Spotify, we're going to be Apple Podcasts, so if you want to listen on your drive, if you want to tell people about us so they can listen to it just to get informed. We need to be informed. They love that we're not informed. Your elected officials love that you don't know what the heck they're doing. When like I said, in some of the past shows when I was running for office and I put out my opponent's voting record, she was telling everyone it was a lie. you can go right on the website. It's not a lie. So she either didn't know what she was voting or she didn't want that out. And I don't think our elected officials want this information out. They want to work in total darkness from you so they can do what the hell they want. You be damned. And I don't know if it's just because they think they know better. I don't know if it's because they get barking orders at a national level, like this is what you're going to do. But whatever it is, we have to change it. And based on the first thing we talked about today, right, when we talked about Happy Easter and about sacrifice, for things to change, it's going to take a lot of people in every state, because this is going on in a lot of states. It's going to take a lot of people to finally get out of their comfort zone and do something, whether that's going to your selectmen's meetings, school committee meetings, going to see your state rep, writing letters, making phone calls, talking to other people, sharing this show, sharing parts of this show so people understand what's going on, talking about it. It doesn't matter. Like, you're going to have to get out of your comfort zone. You're going to have to sacrifice something in order for things to change. If people aren't willing to do that, they're just going to keep on doing what they're doing. So I hope you and I continue this fight. I know we're going to continue this fight. And what we're going to do in future episodes of the Justin Thurber Show, also, we're going to have people on that are actively fighting daily to make Massachusetts a better place. Some have been doing it for years. Some have started recently. We're going to show them, have them on the show to talk about that. Because what we want to do is we want to encourage people out there to do great things. And to do great things, it takes sacrifice. One last thing. Yesterday in one of the towns that's in my district, they had a local election. And the people that I wanted to win, most of them won. Most of them are just average, everyday citizens that want things to be better. And it's tough to stand up. It's tough to say, I'll do it. It's tough to get under that scrutiny. It's tough to take on an additional responsibility. So I thank them. Oh my gosh, I went out and stood out with them for a little while yesterday. And they're like, thank you for coming out. I'm like, no, thank you for doing this, because I understand it's not easy. We've grown accustomed to having a comfortable lifestyle where we just want to be comfortable. We don't want the sharp edges of life, as I said earlier. We want everything softened. Well, because of that, life's getting harder. And if we keep ignoring the problem, it's going to be real bad for our kids. And that's something I won't stand for. I know a lot of people out there are starting to stand up because they're not going to stand for it. And again, it's going to take time. It's going to take sacrifice. And I hope more people stand up.
Yeah, and I think it ties all back into, like you just said, the sacrifice theme too. And we talked about some big sacrifices at the beginning, but really all you have to do to get involved is just small sacrifices.
Yes.
is a great place to start. If you just show up to even just a select board meeting, a lot of them, they have them on the community television. So my town, they have a channel of community television. Tune into a select board meeting, tune into a planning board meeting, show up, help support a candidate. Just, make a small sacrifice. If it's just a couple hours of your week and reach out or learn a little bit more about an issue going on in town. And that's all it takes. Is if we have a lot of people making a few small sacrifices, it starts to build up, and we start to build in the right direction, and we can start to move forward. So I think that's a great tie into today's theme.
Yeah. Well, again, I always think we have kind of good discussions. I hope people that watch the show look at things different, right? That's part of our objective on this show, is to, as I said earlier, come at topics that have been around for a long time and shed a different light. Like, think about it different. How can we do things different, or how can we think about this different, or how can we operate different within what's happening around us? So I hope everyone enjoys the show. Thank you again, Jim. I appreciate you here, being my co-host every week. And I look forward to having people back next week and looking at other, like I said, we're going to have them somewhere. We're still figuring this out. We're going to have videos, links to other videos we have, and they'll be shorter segments. We're going to break a lot of these down into segments so you can just go and watch them at your leisure, a little bit of a shorter amount of time frame. and or maybe just go back to one and say, hey, listen, I really wanted to get more in-depth knowledge of what they were saying. So thank everyone for watching. Jim, until
Thank
next
you
week.
again. Happy Easter.
Happy Easter. Joe Biden with the Christmas hat says Happy Easter. Good night, everyone.